I knew that not having access to a lot of money as a child and kind of seeing my mother struggle made me want to work really, really hard so that I wouldn't have to repeat that for myself. I was, collecting all the accolades. I was getting the promotions, which was great, the awards. I was speaking on the panels and doing the talks and the podcasts, but it all got old very quickly. I got really burnt out. It made me realize, I want that to be my life, as soon as I can make it happen. We can switch it up if we need to. And I always say, you're never too old and it's not too late. You can continuously reinvent yourself as many times as you need to.
Hey everyone, hey dreamer, hey fellow dreamers. Welcome to the first ever podcast of Dreamers Unplugged. We're interviewing members of the Dreamers Club that I met here in Malaga. And I'm super excited because today we have Dani here who's gonna tell a little about her story. So why don't we start there?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be on the first episode. I'll tell you my life story in a condensed version. Okay, cool. So I am originally from Toronto, Canada. I grew up with not a lot of money, and I feel like that really played a big role in my story and how I wanted my future to look. I knew that, not having access to a lot of money as a child and kind of seeing my mother struggle made me want to work really, really hard so that I wouldn't have to repeat that for myself. So that meant that I was hustling hard from an early age as soon as I could. I think I got my first job at McDonald's when I was like 14 years old. Don't even know if it was fully legal, to be honest, but I started working as early as possible and as often as possible. And then eventually I graduated high school. I went to university. I went to school for media production, actually. I thought that one day I was going to be like a weather girl on TV, sharing the weather. Yeah, today it's going to be sunny. It didn't end up working out because as I was working towards the degree, I learned that the media industry in Canada was not very stable. There were quite a bit of layoffs. People weren't really able to retain their jobs for long periods of time. So I was finishing up my degree. I decided I actually want to pivot into marketing. And a lot of the skills that I learned in the media industry and in my media production degree were very transferable to marketing. So thankfully, I didn't need to go back to school and start over again. So in my last year, I actually got an internship with Sony Music, which is one of the biggest music labels in the world. So that was my first foot in the door marketing experience. While I was in university full time, I actually was working 30 hours a week in the mall selling phones.
Wow.
And I did that because I didn't want to take a student loan. I saw that my older sister took a student loan, and that was really difficult for her because she kind of always had this debt over her head. And I didn't want to be in that position. So I decided, all right, I'm going to work as much as I can to save as much as I can and to be able to pay for my school as I have it. So that's what I did. And then once I graduated university, I was lucky enough to be offered a position at that same company that I was working at selling phones in their marketing department.
Nice.
So
You firsthand.
yeah, so I knew firsthand, I'm like, no one knows this business better than me. I've done the customer service part for 5 years at that point. Now I'm transferring into the marketing department, and it was great. It was great. I learned a lot. I was very grateful that I was able to get a job right out of university because that's what a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
And it was great, but I also burnt out very quickly because I was very aggressively trying to climb that corporate ladder. I was, collecting all the accolades. I was getting the promotions, which was great, the awards. I was speaking on the panels and doing the talks and the podcast. But it all got old very quickly, and I got really burnt out. So I decided in 2019, after I'd been working at that company for a total of 10 years, I was going to negotiate a sabbatical from my job, a 6-month sabbatical.
Nice.
Because I'm a marketer, I didn't call it a sabbatical. I decided to brand it as a Liberty Leave. And I define a Liberty Leave as, taking a step back and giving myself permission to step away from what doesn't bring me liberty for what does.
I love that.
Thank you.
So, as a European, for catching me up on what sabbatical means in Canada, do you get paid half of it? Because I know that there are several models out there, and I've known from some corporate jobs in Germany as well that friends would take 6 months sabbatical, but 6 months prior, they would get paid half of their salaries, and then in those 6 months sabbatical, they would get paid the other half.
Interesting.
So, how does that work, or was that in your case?
Interesting. I did not know that. So I think maybe it differs for different companies, but I don't know any company in Canada that will pay you at all.
Okay.
Maybe they'll pay you for a month if you've worked at a company for 5 years. That's very popular in like the tech industry.
Okay.
But for my sabbatical, for example, I was completely unpaid for the 6 months.
So like an unpaid leave then.
It was essentially an unpaid leave, and we're going to hold your job for you. You can have a job to come back to you when you come back. The way that I was able to get paid, at least for the first month, is I just didn't take any vacation for that entire year. So I saved it all. So I left for my sabbatical in October. So the first month of like from October to November technically was paid because I used my 4 weeks of vacation. But no, other than that, it was just me using my savings. And I had planned for my sabbatical for 18 months in advance. So that meant that I did have like a good healthy amount of savings that I could use while I was on this like once in a lifetime adventure.
Okay. And how did that look like? What was your plan for that sabbatical or for your Liberty leave?
Yeah. So for my Liberty leave, I took off 6 months and I visited 6 different countries in Southeast
Okay.
Asia by myself. So
Mhm.
Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, and Malaysia.
Nice.
So that's, yeah. So 6 different countries, time of my life. And doing that like by myself, I really had to learn to like trust myself, my gut, my intuition.
Love that.
But it was truly a life-changing experience. I met so many cool people along the way. And I think that experience is what really let me sample this life of living abroad because
Okay.
it's not so common in Canada to, just pick up and leave for, the extended time like that. So yeah, that really just like opened my eyes to the world of like digital nomadism, for example.
Nice.
I met a lot of people who were doing similar things, but like for real, not on a sabbatical. And it made me realize, like, I want that to be my life, like, as soon as I can make it happen. So, unfortunately, I did need to cut my sabbatical a little bit short because the pandemic happened and it was very scary to be on that side of the world when that happened. So, I had to come home a little bit early
So you came home in March, April?
in March,
Okay.
March 3rd to be exact. And it was right before, like, I was in the Philippines at the time.
Okay.
Had I left like a week or two later, I would have been stuck in the country for months because they weren't letting any flights in or out for like months. That's when the world really had shut down.
I mean, it was a crazy time.
It was a crazy time, and especially to be over there. So I'm really glad that I got out when I did. I think actually I ended up booking. I woke up one day and I'm like, this is getting scary. I'm gonna book my flight for 2 days, like from 2 days from now. And the flight was packed with Canadians. Like there were no seats left. It was chaos in the airport. When you looked at the airport board, all of the flights were canceled. Like it was getting really scary. So I'm glad that I got out when I did.
Yeah, I can imagine, but you trusted your gut. Like you said, that's one thing you learned there, right?
That's
Yeah,
exactly what I
love
learned
it.
because like when you're by yourself in those situations, things get scary sometimes, right?
They do.
They do, especially as a woman and especially as a Black woman in Asia, because like people are, what are you doing here? Like the looks that I got were like, interesting.
Yeah, they're not really used to it, I guess.
They're not used to it. And I eventually, like, I've traveled quite a bit and, in a lot of countries where I often go solo and people are not used to seeing people like me. So you kind of learn to embrace the stares a little bit and not get like upset about them.
Okay.
But in some countries, it was a little bit more aggressive than others, but it's a part of the experience.
Yeah, but I love that you're talking about it because I feel like a lot of times on social media, especially, we only see the highlights of how cool it is to travel.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love it. I guess I think we all do. But there are sides of it that no one sees.
Absolutely. And I'm also afraid of everything. Like everything
Well,
that
I mean,
crawls, like lizards, bugs, birds, I'm afraid of everything. So I would say like that's one of the parts that really freaked me out about that because when you're in Southeast Asia and there's like we're in jungle in a lot of places, there's a lot of wildlife there.
so how did you handle that?
A lot of the times I made sure to stay in accommodations where there were people, well, there was like someone at the front desk that I could call. I need you to take care of this gecko for me, sir. Please, please. And they did.
Yeah. So how was their response?
They were like, okay, I guess. They were very friendly, though. I'm very appreciative of how kind they were for me.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Yeah. I was traveling with my brother once and he's not a huge fan of like spiders and everything.
Yeah.
And well, let's just say me neither, but yeah, you get used to it at a certain point.
I do not, but some people do.
But and in the end, you just need to figure out a way around it and not let it hold you back because you could have also just said, let's go to a country where we don't have wildlife.
Exactly.
But I love that.
Yeah, I definitely made sure to just like, okay, this is just one downside of it. But in the bigger picture of things, like I love Southeast Asia. It's my favorite region in the world. It's beautiful. It's easy to get around. The food is incredible. The people tend to be pretty nice. It's just like my favorite place, honestly.
But I love that, even though there is a wildlife going on.
Yes. Even though the wildlife, even though the nature is in the nature. Yes.
I love that. But how was it? Well, first question, how did your family, friends, colleagues, etc. react when you first said, I'm going on a Liberty leave? Because you said you planned it for 18 months?
Yes. I planned it for 18 months in advance. So my family is Jamaican. And traditionally, like Jamaicans are people who oftentimes they tend to play it safe, especially when they're immigrants, they've left Jamaica, they've finally come to Canada, they have secure jobs. A lot of the times, my family at least will say like, "Okay, we're here now. Get your job, your cushy job. Don't cause any trouble. Don't shake any tables.
Mm.
Do what you're told. Save your money and just stay there forever. Stay there as long as you can." That's exactly what my mom did. She stayed at the same company when she came to Canada for like 25, 30 years. And she never had a desire to leave or to see, what else was out there because this worked. It was good enough. So when I told my mom that I wanted to, do this thing and potentially take a sabbatical, she's like, well, why would you risk losing your job? Why would you stop making money for 6 months? What is this going to look like for your finances? What is this going to look like on your resume? You're going to have this big career gap. Like, a lot of her fears were projected onto me because that's just something she wouldn't have done. And something that, maybe a lot of immigrants may not have done if they came from, maybe not so ideal situations back home and finally landed at opportunities in Canada. But for me, I know that I've always worked my ass off in terms of like always making sure that I'm educating myself, always making sure that I'm building a personal brand online, making sure people know who I am, making sure people know my accomplishments in the marketing industry. I knew that, like, worst case scenario, I wasn't able to get this exact job back. I would find another one, you know, and that's really trying to shed that scarcity mindset that I was brought up in and trying to move more towards an abundance mindset. Because, yes, maybe this opportunity may not work out, but something's always going to find me. I'm always going to find something, right? So, my family was not the most supportive, except for my sister, but she's 10 years older than me and, like, a little bit, a little bit more tolerant to things like this. But most of my family is like, what are you doing? Are you okay? But hey, it worked out. Even now today, they don't really understand, like, what are you doing in Spain? Why are you there?
Why are you not coming back?
When are you coming? Are you
Yeah.
coming back? But I think slowly they're starting to accept that I'm not really someone who wants to live like a normal life. I'm very passionate about lifestyle design and not necessarily living my life in a way that we're told we need to be normal, but more so living my life in a way that meets my needs and excites me and gets me happy to wake up every morning and try something new and dabble in new things and be in new environments. That's what I want to do. I don't want to just live in, the same house that I bought for my whole life, working my same 9 to 5 job. That's just not where I am right now.
Oh, yeah, I get that. So when you came back to Canada due to the pandemic, what happened then?
So I did go back to my job.
Mm.
Thankfully, they did hold the job for me. But I decided after maybe about a year that I was going to switch to another company that paid me double the amount of money for, my same skill set, which was nice. It was actually my dream job at the time. It was a company I had really wanted to work for, but it burnt me out. It burnt
Right.
me out worse than I had ever been burnt out before because that company is a company that they say, like, we only hire the best of the best. And everyone is really trying to show their value and show that they deserve to be there. And that is a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe of,
Pressure.
it's a ton of pressure.
Goosebumps.
It's so much pressure. And it becomes sometimes like a very cutthroat environment because everyone is trying to do the best that they can to show that they deserve to be there. And of course, I wanted to do that too. I wanted to continue to have this job. And especially for someone like me who was making double the amount of money that I was before, and someone who was not used to making that type of money, I wanted to hold on to it for as long as I could. And I did before I completely burnt out, like to a point where I remember my partner had just watched me work one day. We were in Portugal. We were working in Portugal for a month. And typically, him and I had lived separately. But for this month, we were living together in the same space. So he had like a firsthand view of how I was working. And he's like, you have not got up to drink water. You have not eaten today. You are now working in the dark. You don't get up. He's like, this is not healthy. We cannot continue this way. Like, you are going to like get seriously ill if you continue doing this. And I'm like, huh, now that you put it that way, you're right. I haven't got up. I didn't even notice it because I was just so deep into my work. Yeah. So he brought it to my attention. He made me promise to go to therapy. I started going to therapy. I ended up negotiating an 8-week stress leave or short-term disability from my job. And I took that time to really think about, okay, what are we doing here? Is this even healthy? Do we need to continue this? And that's when I decided I wasn't going to continue it. And by the time I was set to go back to my job anyway, they had laid me off. They laid me off. So I'm like, wow, the decision was made for me. I probably shouldn't have gone back to this job anyway, just for the sake of my mental health. And I'm really grateful, honestly, that I was laid off because not only did I get severance for being laid off, so I'm like, that's great, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But also it gave me like the perfect runway to be able to move to Malaga for a year on the youth mobility visa or the working holiday visa. That's how my partner and I got here.
Okay.
I didn't have a job, therefore I didn't need to negotiate with a company to relocate me or anything like that. It was just easy.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love how, sometimes the universe or whoever you believe in just aligns the decisions for you. And sometimes it feels like, fuck, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
But in the end, it all works out.
Always works out.
But let's circle back a little to the burnout story. Because I know that we talked about this before. I just want to put it on here as well. Because I feel like a lot of people that I meet as well, or also from back home, that had pretty much a similar path. And like growing up for me was pretty much the same thing. You work to have the financial stability so that you can provide more and like just have that lifestyle. And career ladder is like the thing. If you don't do that, then something's wrong with you. But I see so many, especially women, suffer from burnouts or early stages of burnout, and the physical symptoms that they are having, they are kind of normal around everywhere. And I'm like, this is not normal. Migraines are not normal. Not wanting to get out of bed is not normal. Being super tired after work is not normal. I don't know if you had that experience as well after you shared your story on socials as well, but I hear this so many times and it scares me.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying that you're right. A lot of us have just normalized this because we're like, this is what it means to have a job. But it doesn't need to be that way. Like for me, I was losing hair. I was not sleeping. I would constantly be fidgeting. Like I just couldn't relax. I was constantly like obsessing over my to-do list, everything that I needed to accomplish for that day. It was just a recipe for disaster, truly. I wasn't eating. I didn't have time to exercise or take care of myself. I was like forgetting when to take supplements and things like that because it just wasn't a priority. It was not good.
It's crazy. I mean, not only hearing your story is some kind of a representation of so many from our generation
Yeah.
that were brought up in different circumstances and apparently all over the world. We have a similar issue that we're so forced into this what we achieve mentality rather than just checking in with ourselves. Like, what do we need and what's supposed to be normal for us? So being happy apparently isn't normal anymore.
Yeah. It's sad. We often adopt like this by any means necessary mentality. And it's like, well, yeah, we have to make money. The world is really expensive. We're in a cost of living crisis. So we have to get our money by any means necessary. But what's the point in, getting the money to buy these things if we're not even taking care of ourselves? A lot of us are on the road to developing like autoimmune diseases and disorders, etc., because of this constant stress that we're putting ourselves under. So I'm really grateful to myself that I negotiated that 8-week stress leave from my job because at first first of all, I didn't want to admit to myself that I needed it because it's almost like admitting defeat. It almost felt like I was admitting my weakness. But if anything, like I feel like it's a flex. Like I feel it's actually something to be proud of because you realize like you're listening to your body. Your body's telling you something is not right. So you need to slow down. And that's exactly what I did. I almost felt at first like a bit embarrassed or ashamed when it came to like my coworkers knowing that I was on this leave. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I have to look out for myself, right? I have to look out for number one. No one's going to take care of me like I'm going to take care of me. So this is a priority.
Also, no one knows how you feel. Like,
Exactly.
no one in our environment knows how we're feeling.
Yeah.
and we are living it, no one else. But I completely agree. I was terrified when I quit my job.
Yeah.
I was like, what would others say? Like this reputation that you build around your job.
Yes.
I think for me, this was the hardest part ever. Looking back, probably one of the hardest times in my life. I know it might sound silly because, well, I grew up in a stable environment. Growing up in Germany was very safe. But yeah, it was the hardest time in my life because I took away my identity.
Yeah.
But I took it away. So I couldn't even blame someone else because I took it away. So yeah, but then we have to ask ourselves, who are you and what do you want to do? And this can be tough.
It can be so tough, and I relate to that. A lot of my identity was tied to these big companies
Mm.
and, getting accolades and climbing the ladder at these companies or getting these awards or being featured on these panels or these podcasts. But at the end of the day, if all of those things are contributing to me being burnt out and unwell, and I know that I need to slow down to be healthy and be okay, then that's what I need to do. People definitely have looked at me differently. I find people don't necessarily respect me the same as they did when I was tied to these like larger companies and our identities were very intertwined. But okay, that's fine. Like I'm happy. I'm happier now than I've ever been. I feel freer than I've ever been. I feel like I've actually liberated myself from that toxic environment. So whoever is gone now or not along for the ride, that's fine. But my true community is still, riding with me and following me.
Oh yeah, I love that. And it's definitely one of the things we see in Dreamers Club as well. We talk about this a lot, especially last weekend. We also had this topic of feeling lonely, of like losing people that once were our ride or dies or the closest to us. And especially if you're in in the corporate world, like your coworkers are the ones you spend most of your days with, most of your times with, especially when you work so hard and so much. Like these are the people that are in your life every day. But once you change that and you take out the same job, there's not much left of like similarities or like things you would like to do with each other, and that can be scary sometimes.
Can be terrifying, but it's almost like dead weight in a sense. It's like, okay, if they're
Yeah.
not there to fully support all seasons of you, then you don't really need them in your life.
I love that picture of seasons of me. Yeah, I just had a conversation with a friend as well. Like we are on a path, and we don't have to have the people being on the same path as us. But the true friendships, they support you even if you're on a different path.
Yeah.
Especially as women. A lot of my friends back home, they are getting married, having kids, which is not my lifestyle right now, which doesn't mean I don't support them.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, obviously they have different topics, and I don't necessarily like connect with the same topics, but that doesn't mean I can not be interested in your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think we have to go back to this, like being more like understanding what does the other person need, want, and what's their dream,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, let's talk about your dream. So we talked about how you had the break, that how you had the burnout, and then started to go to Spain. So what do you do now? How does your life look like today?
Yeah, so I am a content creator right now, primarily focusing on personal finance and travel are like my main niches. I also focus on career breaks or liberty leaves because what I've learned, and especially with sharing my story about just struggling with burnout and needing a break, is there's a lot of women who are suffering in silence about this like exact same thing. And they want to take career breaks or liberty leaves, but they just don't know how. And I do because I've done it a few times now. I've gone through burnout. I've planned career breaks, everything from the logistics to the finances to the mindset to needing to seek therapy and things like that. So now I'm working on building a course and community to help women who want to take their own liberty leaves and, make it happen and find a supportive group of people who understand what they're going through so they can all kind of live that dream of taking one together.
I love that.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. And I always wonder, so let's say you have, well, not let's say, you already have like a company people doing these liberty leaves. How do they feel after going back to jobs? Like, does that change something in their, like, how they see the workplace afterwards? Or like, what is the things happening after?
I find a lot of women, including myself, don't ever want to go back to what the life they were living previously.
I get that.
Once they get this sample of freedom or liberty and just really dive into lifestyle design, which is just like saying, okay, well, this actually didn't work for me before. I just did it because everyone said I should do this. But now I'm doing something I actually want to do. Once they get a taste of that, they don't ever want to go back to that cookie cutter lifestyle. So a lot of women will find themselves changing careers entirely, moving abroad, etc., and just doing things that align more with what they actually truly like doing. A lot of them end up going into entrepreneurship or at least pursuing entrepreneurship as a side hustle until they can afford to do it as their main hustle. A lot of life changes follow these Liberty Leaves.
Oh yeah, I can imagine once you got that freedom,
Yes.
you sense that there's no way of turning back.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened for me, right? Like on my first Liberty Leave when I went to Southeast Asia, I did own my home in Toronto. I just rented it out temporarily because I knew that this was just going to be temporary. I was going to come back. But on the second Liberty Leave that I would consider myself on now, where I moved to Malaga, I sold my place in Toronto before I came because I'm like, I think I want to do this forever. And even so, if not, then I'll figure it out. I'll buy another place if or when I want to come back to Toronto permanently. But, right now I'm really enjoying this lifestyle of living abroad and, trying different countries with my partner and, just seeing where life takes us.
I love that. So you would describe the liberty leave as a certain span of time where you just try out different things. So what are things people try out or women that you've accompanied?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, whether they want to or not, they try out therapy.
This is a good thing.
It is a good thing because a lot of us think, oh, we don't need therapists. We can figure out our stuff ourselves. But if you are constantly getting into a cycle of burnout over and over again, it's not just because, it's not a coincidence. There's an underlying issue where you feel like you need to continuously go above and beyond to your own detriment in order to exist in the workplace. And that's a problem. We are going to continue to get into that state of burnout unless we address the underlying issue. And that's where therapy really comes in. And that's where therapy really helped me as well to understand, okay, this is a pattern. Like we got to fix this for sure. So that's one thing. I would say the second thing is just, dabbling in life abroad.
Mhm.
A lot of women are, country hopping in different parts of the world, seeing, oh, I think I could actually do this like for a living. I think that I could live in this different country, or I think I could do a digital nomad lifestyle and spend 3 months here, 3 months here. So a lot of them try to just like scout different cities that they could potentially move their lives to. And I'd say the third most popular thing is just working on how they can monetize their passions. So
Ooh.
really finding a way that they can, make money off of things that they're good at. And especially in like on a remote space, like doing it online so they can continuously move abroad or, do the digital nomad thing if that's what they want to do. I'd say those are probably the three most popular things folks do on these breaks.
I love that because I feel like this is like what everyone else at the Dreamers Club kind of like pictures. And we talked about this one thing. I remember when we first met at one of our the brunches, one of our main topics was finances. And I know that you're very passionate about the whole finance topic because let's face it, if we want to make our dreams come true, they are necessary. We need to have them in order. We need cash flow coming in. We need money.
We need money. Yeah.
See, it's as simple as it is. If you have a dream, we need money.
Yeah.
So what do you see, like, do you see a difference in education towards women and money and or in general money these days? Like, is there something that you wish people would know more?
Yeah. We could do a whole podcast episode on this, but here, let's scratch the surface. To summarize, I would say a lot of people think that saving money is enough. They think that, as long as when I make money, I put it into a savings account, even if it has like a 0.1% interest rate, that's enough. And it's not. Investing is the cheat code. And there's one thing that I wish women knew more about, it was investing. I think a lot of women get kind of decision fatigue when it comes to investing because they don't know what to invest in. They're afraid, they think it's too risky, etc. And I just wish women would take the time to learn how the stock market works, even if it's on like the most basic level. I don't know if robo advisors are a thing in Europe, but essentially you throw your money into this account. In North America, you throw your money into an account and a robot manages your portfolio for you.
Okay.
You don't have to do anything. You just answer questions about what's your risk tolerance? How old are you? When do you plan to retire? Things like that. And it will manage your money for you. I wish even like that people would just get started with to get more comfortable with investing and then move to maybe more complicated things like ETFs or individual stocks, etc. But in general, it is not enough to just throw your money in a savings account or keep cash under your mattress or whatever. Inflation, it is a thing. Inflation is very real. And if we do not do what we can to offset that inflation, we're losing money.
True.
So I really do just wish people would invest. And also I wish people would have an emergency savings account. I think that emergency savings are underrated. And to be fair, we are living in a cost of living crisis right now where people are often living paycheck to paycheck. So it's difficult to be even able to save for an emergency. But having emergency funds empowers you to leave situations that no longer serve you. And that can mean maybe a toxic relationship, whether that's romantic, but that can also mean work as well.
Yeah.
For me, for example, when you get burnt out, like sometimes I would push through because I'm like, I know that I need the money. I know that I need to continue to work as hard as I can because I can't afford to leave. But had I had like a healthy savings account, an emergency savings account, I could afford to just walk away because I'm like, you know what? I can afford to take a break for a little bit and I'll go back when I'm ready and maybe to an environment that is not this.
Yeah.
So emergency savings, especially for women, are so empowering because it allows you to walk away from things that no longer serve you.
The other day I heard the term "fuck you money."
Oh yeah.
I really like that. I mean, sorry for my wording, but yeah.
No, FU money. And also in the Caribbean or a lot of Africa, we call it vex money,
Okay.
which is like vex means like you're angry. So same idea, it's vex money. Peace out. Like, I don't need you.
Sure.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. And it changes your perspective on what you're doing because it's like, okay, I don't need to do this.
Exactly.
I don't need to be here, but if I do something, I want to do it.
Exactly. It gives you options and it opens more doors for you and it buys you time as well.
Yeah. And I also, not only in workplaces, but you just mentioned romantic relationships as well. I feel like this is also where I love that women are having more and more their own financial independence, which when we look back on, our parents, that was not always the case. I was lucky enough that my mom already lived that. So I thought that's normal until I figured it's not that normal.
Yeah.
And so many women are still dependent on their partners. And I'm not saying not having a partner. That's completely not what I'm saying. But I feel like the dynamic changes and the level of relationship changes.
For sure. And financial abuse is really common, unfortunately, in some abusive relationships as well. Like having your money controlled and like, withholding money if you're not serving something up to their what they want. So yeah, it's a problem and it empowers us to have our own money for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then we choose.
Yeah.
And the power of choice, that's why, I mean, money is a tool and it gives us the power of choice. Nothing more and nothing less.
Exactly.
It doesn't define our value. But I think that connection always, also like, especially when you come from backgrounds where achievements matter so much. I feel like what kind of money you make puts the value on your person and your personality.
Yeah,
But we have to like disconnect that.
for sure.
And that's where therapy no and like get you into this whole road
Exactly.
of like, who am I actually? What's my worth besides of what I do for work?
100%.
Ooh, I did. Yeah, now I feel it physically as well. But yeah, but that's the root. Once we have figured that out, or at least getting there, I feel like the more layers you pull off, the more layers are coming. But that's the beauty of it.
It is. And a lot of us have money traumas as well. I took a certification in a program called Trauma of Money to learn about,
Wow.
different financial traumas that a lot of us have. And a lot of our financial traumas were passed down to us from previous generations, whether it's, scarcity mindset or things that allow us to, get burnt out because we feel like we have to be on 100 or 110 all the time to be worth anything. A lot of us have financial avoidance as well, where we're not even looking at our financial accounts because it's just too overwhelming. It freaks us out.
Yeah.
We don't want to know what's going on in our credit card statement, etc. So yeah, therapy, I think, does really help with a lot of this stuff to understand the underlying issues of if we have problems with money, why those are there in the first place.
Yeah. And usually they are not money is not the problem.
There's
The
something
problem is somewhere else.
Exactly.
Money is just like, it's like basically I see it like your body as well. Your body is telling you what's going on and what's not going on.
Yeah.
And money as well. If you have a lack, there's a lack somewhere else.
For sure.
And like what you said earlier with the generations, if we look at our generation, our previous generations, they came from a completely different background.
Mhm.
Like when you were saying your family as immigrants, we didn't have that in my family, but there was a war not too long ago. So my grandma was growing up in that mindset. So there was a lack of everything.
Yeah.
So obviously they then raised their kids, which was my mom, completely different in the mindset of you have to work, you have to build, you have to grow, grow, grow. And then there's us who, well, we were raised and we had everything. Like, let's face it. Like, we had food, we had education, we had a stable home. Like, we had it all. Maybe not on like the crazy scale, but the basics were there. So there was no need for us to actually build the basics anymore. But we kept continuing to work that way. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. I
I
understand.
think we just have to try to understand more of where we come from and not judging. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the problem is sometimes as well when people start getting into this. They're like, oh, yeah, but my parents said that and my parents did that. It's like, yes, they did. But let's go to a place where we understand where they are coming from and the previous generations. And then let's just focus on how can we make it better for maybe even our parents as well. Show them, we can actually show them how life can be now.
Yeah, for sure.
So we can help them too. I love that.
Yeah, me as well. Studies show that like traumas are actually passed down through genes. So,
Yeah.
for example, like if your grandmother was
Yep.
living through a war, or, if my ancestors lived through like slavery and things like that, like those things are passed down to us. And it's up to us to unlearn a lot of those things and to try to like prevail and see, like, okay, yes, these things did happen, but we can change what our future outlook will be now.
True. And we can only focus on today.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing we have. It's today. How can we feel better? How can we live what we want
Mhm.
and be better? Like, that's the only point. We're just here to live.
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
For sure. We can acknowledge what they went through while still trying to, shape our futures in the best way that we can.
Yeah. And then also for next generations. And I'm
Yes.
pretty sure they will have another look at us then. Pretty much similar than
Yeah.
we have a look at our parents because they will have different upbringing as well.
For sure.
So yeah, we can only focus on ourselves.
Absolutely.
One final question. What would you advise to people that want to go on a liberty leave? What should they do?
Yes. I would say a few things. One, as we mentioned, you need money to do things.
Yeah.
Money is what provides us with options and possibilities. So, start putting together a financial plan for how you will take this liberty leave. For me, I planned it into three buckets. How can I make more money? Which meant, getting a raise at work, starting a side hustle, selling things around the house, etc. That was the first bucket, make more money. The second one is how can I save more money, which is essentially, cutting costs, cutting expenses. And the third one is how can I make better use of the money I have now? So, if all my money is sitting in cash or sitting in a checkings account with 0.1% interest, let's not do that. Let's start investing. Let's move to high interest savings accounts, things like that, so I can actually make more money. So, finances would be the first thing. And also just be patient with yourself. A lot of people think that, oh, I can never take a liberty leave or a career break because I can't afford it. It took me a year and a half to be able to get to that place, right? And sometimes it will take people several years to be able to save for it, but you have to start somewhere. So saving is important. And I would say the second thing would be to just give yourself permission to pause. A lot of us feel like we can't. We're too deep in. We're too deep into our current lives. We're too in our current cities. We have been at our jobs for too long. We have these friendships and these communities already. We don't really want to delve into something new. Give yourself permission to pause and think, okay, well, what if I wanted to see what else is out there? My community is not going anywhere. Like me, I still have all of my friends. I just do a lot of FaceTime calls, like
Yeah.
a lot more FaceTime calls and video calls before than I would when I was there.
Thanks to technology. Love it.
Yeah, technology makes it a lot easier, and especially with the ability to remote work, for example. Yeah, I worked like a cool 9 to 5 office job back in the day, but there's so many new opportunities out there now. If you know where to find them, if you know where to look. So I would just advise people to, give themselves permission to pause and think about what life could look like, and also just think about lifestyle design. Let's not continue to live a life that we're told we have to be considered normal.
Wow, can you repeat that?
What did I say? Let's not continue to live this life that we have been told we have to be normal. We don't necessarily need to own our home in the city that we were born in, that our family is in. We don't necessarily need to work this job that we've worked out forever that doesn't really bring us joy, but it pays the bills. We can switch it up.
Oh yeah.
We can switch it up if we need to. And I always say, you're never too old and it's not too late. You can continuously reinvent yourself as many times as you need to. So I would just say for folks to consider that.
Oh my God, I love this. I think this is a perfect note to end this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for
Thank
sharing your knowledge, and being so open about everything. I know this is not very common these days. So I love your authenticity and your real talk. Thank you for that. And yeah, that was episode number 1. I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to the next one. And yeah, stay tuned for the next ones.
Thank you for having me.